Hello everyone, John Fennell here at Great Lakes Fly Shop, and we're starting into our second series, or I think it's our third maybe, on the basics of fly tying. So if you've been watching my videos on YouTube, you'll know that we've covered the tools, some of the management of some of the methods that you use. So please, I encourage you, go on to some of my previous videos on YouTube and subscribe, give them a big thumbs up, and it lets me know that you guys appreciate it and checking out my videos. The fly we're going to be doing today is called the flash-sided bead-headed woolly bugger, and I enjoy doing this fly. I've taught it for many years. It has a lot of character to it. There is different varieties of a typical woolly bugger you could tie, but I typically like to put a little bit more pizzazz into my woolly buggers. If you can see, it's got quite a bit of flash in it, and it does have some pretty awesome moving parts to it also. So if you could see it, they're pretty decent. Anyway, the thing about the woolly bugger is that there are different sizes, and primarily what you want to do is tie them in olive, brown, and black. Those are the basic colors for doing a woolly bugger. You can do them in a lot of different fashions and sizes, but just to do the basic woolly bugger, it goes pretty fast, and it's a fly that can be used in a lot of different places. On rivers, lakes, you name it. And it catches a lot of different varieties of fish, from smallmouth, steelhead, local trout. A lot of people look at the woolly bugger in a kind of a, I don't know, hey man, that's for little kids or whatever, and that is so not true. The reason is because it's so easy to tie, and unless you really add a lot of different things to it, it's pretty much a basic fly. So that's why I like to teach it for people that are just getting into fly tying. It's an awesome fly to tie. It's fairly easy to do, and it catches a lot of fish. So also keep in mind that the woolly bugger can be used as a base, but then you can add different things. In this case, you'll notice I've added rubber legs, and then also I've added a skull, a clear skull, and some eyes on the side. So that gives it a little bit more flair. If you do the fly like this and you do it in white, it's really an awesome fly on the North Shore here of Minnesota for catching lake trout. So anyway, if you notice, I put a little bit of pink in there. I did a little two-tone, also some rubber legs. The fly I'm working on today is the Dakili, and I've had this fly on my videos on YouTube, but you'll see this is nothing more than an exaggerated form of woolly bugger. Okay? So what sets a woolly bugger apart? The basic thing is that this is tied on a longer hook. Okay, and the reason that is because you require this fly to imitate a certain bait fish or leech. So it's tied on a longer hook, and that hook we call a streamer hook, and that's this hook here. There's different manufacturers out there. This is the Daiichi 2220 size 6, and if you notice, the one thing about it, it's got a super long shank in there, and that facilitates adding weight and putting a lot of material on the hook. It is called a streamer hook, comparable to, say, this hook, which is typically a nymph hook or a soft hackle or a wet fly hook. You'll notice that it has a shorter shank. Okay, so that's the big difference between woolly buggers and doing wet flies and nymphs, is that they're tied on a longer shank hook. The other thing, and we'll get tying this fly here real shortly, is dealing with weight. In today's class, we're going to be dealing with how to apply weight to your hook. In today's fly fishing world, a lot of people are using what's called sink tips, and they're using unweighted flies, which is awesome. But for some of us that like to use weighted flies to get the fly down fast, we like to add weight to it. In this case, you'll notice one of the methods is by applying lead-free wire to the actual hook. In other words, you just unwrap it off the spool and wrap it around the hook shank. And this comes in a variety of different sizes too. This is a size 6 hook, so it's a fairly big hook. And the other method, of course, which I like to do a lot, is add beads, okay? So beads are actually one of the biggest reasons that you want a longer hook shank, because a bead takes up a lot of space. In this case, this is a size 6 hook, and I'm using a size 3/16 tungsten bead, okay? Tungsten is a heavier type of bead. It gets down really fast than your normal 10 beads, which are coated with copper, gold. So these also come coated, but they are a tungsten and they give it a lot more weight. So, and it is on a size 6 hook, like I mentioned earlier. So, I think that about covers it. Again, watch my other videos, and it goes into explaining some of the tools and stuff that we use here for fly tying. But, you know, check them out. Give me some feedback. Let me know what you think. And I love talking about fly tying, so if there's any questions you might have, get a hold of me at the shop at 218-740-3040, or shoot me an email, lesterriver@aim.com. Be more than happy to talk to you about how we put flies together and stuff. So anyway, I hope you could see that pretty decent. So here we go. The bead-headed, flash-sided woolly bugger. Okay. What I'm using right now is, I'm using a pretty heavy thread. Since it is a size 6, I am using Danville's 210 thread, which is a pretty heavy thread. I like using that thread a lot on big streamers, big bass bugs. I rarely ever get away from it. So that's the really interesting part. I use this quite a bit, and it's ready, so it makes it a lot easier. So first, what we do is we seize on the thread. And again, I do all this on all my videos, so I might be going a little faster in this video because I've explained basic tying methods in my other videos. But if you got a question, shoot, fire away, man. So what we do first is we seize the thread onto the hook shank. Let me get this a little bit better. There we go. How's that? And we bring the thread back to the bend, okay? A lot of people like me to put up a little sign and show the materials, and I could do that. It's just that it takes extra time, so just bear in mind the reason I'm doing this is because I try to keep the timing of the videos pretty short. I know you like to pause them and check them out and stuff like that, but I'll try to go at this systematically and show you the materials that I'm using as I'm putting them on, okay? So here we go now. We're going to go bring the thread back to the bend of the hook. And you generally like to start all tying with flies at the bend of the hook. In other words, you bring the thread back. The reason is because in most flies, not all of them, but in most flies, you incorporate putting on tails. And that is always put on first, all right? Speaking of tails, the materials we're going to be working with today is marabou. And this is our tail for the woolly bugger. Marabou comes in a lot of different colors. And generally what I like to use is strung marabou. There are different types of marabou out there. There's actually woolly bugger marabou. I don't like using that. I like the longer stuff because it not only gives your woolly bugger extra length, but it's a little bit easier to manage, I think. So all you do is you pull the marabou off of the you know, tied up thread parts there. And the first thing you'll notice about marabou is that it's a pretty crazy material to work with, okay? It does like to, here, how's that? It does like to do its own thing. So what I generally like to do is just comb it like that, get all the fibers to stay in one direction. You're generally going to be using the tips, all right? You got the butt section, but you're going to be using the tips. And the first things you want to do is kind of determine the length of your tail, all right? And how you do that is you judge it based on the size of your hook shank, all right? You can make it longer if you like, totally up to you, but generally what you do is you hold it like this as you're managing the fibers with this hand, okay? And you'll notice that you could see it in this part, and you just hold it up against the hook shank like that. Okay, that looks about right. And then what you do is you come over to this hand and grab it. And that gives you an idea of how much length you're going to have in your woolly bugger, okay? So what you do now is you take this hand and you bring it over where the thread is hanging, and you just lay it on top and pinch both items, the hook shank and the material. Then you reach over with this hand, grab them both again, the hook shank and the material, and bring your thread up and over, pinch it in between your thumb and index finger, and bring it down. Once, pinch it in between the thumb and index finger, twice, bring it up again, pinch it in between the thumb and index finger a third time, and you should by then have seized or placed the tail on top of the hook shank, okay? You can see, you can adjust it a little bit if you like, all right? And then what I like to do is I take a few wraps just to make sure that, hey, this stuff is not gonna go nowhere, okay? So there you have the first part of the woolly bugger, the tail. It's at the right length, all right? Then what I like to do is, you notice all this extra stuff here. I like to get rid of it. You don't want it on the hook. So I cut it at an angle, all right? So when you're cutting it, you cut it in parallel with the hook shank. And what that does is that gives you a little bit more of a flatter surface versus a big lump at the end. So now you have a nice ramp kind of going there, and that gives you a flatter surface for the next step, and that is to take care of all this material. I just take my thread and wrap over it. Okay, as I'm doing that, if you notice, my fingers are sliding down the hook shank, and that facilitates getting that material to behave a little bit. If you're still having issues with your marabou, keep beside you a little bucket of water, little dish thing of water. Wet your fingers and comb it back. Just comb the marabou back and it'll actually flatten out pretty nice, okay? Next, what I want to do is, since I'm putting on flash, all right, this is where it gets a little bit tricky, but I like to add flash to both sides of my woolly bugger, not on top, but on each side. Now, you don't have to go through this method. You could actually just put on flash on the tail and leave it, okay? But on my flies, on this one, I kind of like to add the flash in the body. If you notice, there's a little bit of flash in there, right there. I like that because that gives it a little bit more character. And how I do that is I add a material that we worked with before. It's called crystal flash, all right? So the first part of the tail is marabou, strung marabou. And the next part we're going to add flash to is called crystal flash. And in this case, I'm using black to kind of match the body. You don't have to. It's your fly. You can use any color. But what we're going to do first is we're going to take off a few strands from inside the envelope here. Well, how I do that is I take my scissors and I just cut the top parts of the bag, the little plastic bag, at an angle on each side, okay? Then what I do is I stick my scissors inside the cuts and I pull out, I don't know, what do you say, that's about 10 strands? That's 10 strands. And then I lay them on the table, and then I go in and I do another 10 strands. Okay? Everyone can see that okay? I just pull that off, cut it, all right? Again, crystal flash. You can use other flash material, you know, especially for a size 6, but I like to use crystal flash because it has a small profile to it. So now what I do is I kind of measure it at the same length of my tail, all right? And I'm going to be doing this side first. So what I do is I lay it up against the tail on the side, hold it with my fingers and thumb, and then bring my thread up and over. Always remember you're going up and over the hook shank, up and over. Now what you'll notice is that I've secured the crystal flash on there, but I've left a little space in between where I've secured it with the thread and where the tail is, okay? The reason I do that is for this reason. What I do next is, since this stuff, you don't want to cut it off, is going to be the flash on the side of the woolly bugger, I actually bend it back and then secure it with the thread. Try not to get it mixed up with your actual tail fibers, so this would actually be used on this material part right here, and that's called a material holder. All right? So now I've got that on that side, okay? Now we're going to do the other side. Again, place the length of the flash up against the side of the marabou, or the tail. Hold it there with your hands or fingers. Reach over, do an up and over, secure 3 times. Leave a little space in between the tail and where you secured it, and now fold it back. Get it out of the way and secure it with your thread. Okay? If you notice that the material that's going over the side of the body of the woolly bugger is tucked back in here, okay? You can see that. I'm going to push this thing back a little bit so you can see it. It's tucked back up against the material holder right here. This is called a material holder clip. Okay? Next, what we want to do is we want to add a material that's going to not only give segmentation to the design of the fly, but it's actually going to be holding a lot of the material together, and that's wire. Okay? I like to use different color wires. In this case, we're going to be using gold wire. Okay? And in this case, since we're working with a size 6 hook, bear in mind your wires are all different. This is actually brassy uni wire, okay? You can get bigger sizes. This is actually red and it's medium. But since it's a size 6, I like to go right at about the size of the brassy, okay? One thing you will notice is that it did unravel. So I will tell you this, fair warning, make sure you always keep it in that little plastic purple thing there. If not, she'll unravel on you. So what I do is I take off about maybe 7 inches of it. Again, fingernail clippers. Don't use your expensive scissors to cut wire, my friend. You'll be in the shop, which I don't mind. You'll be in the shop buying another pair of scissors. And then what we do is I go ahead and I place the wire back where the tail is. You don't want any gaps. Back where the tail is, I go underneath the hook shank, in front of the thread. So the thread is hanging back here by the tail. I go underneath the hook shank with this little piece, underneath the hook shank in front of the thread, and secure it. Okay? And then I bring the thread back. So now the wire sits back there with the body material and everything else. Okay, and then I actually put it in the material clip holder here. Keeps it from doing that. Or I wrap it around the vise. Some way to keep it back there. You want the material that you're going to be wrapping forward to lay back there. And you mount everything on the side. So it's on your side that you're mounting all your products. The next thing we're going to be working with is chenille. All right, chenille is a great product. In this case, this one is size medium. All right, since it is a size 6 hook, you want a fairly large size chenille Chenille is nothing more than a cloth material that's binded in a rope style fashion. Okay, in a rope style fashion. All right, with thread. Okay, so it's used for making bodies. All right, chenille comes in a different styles. In other words, this is Estes. It's got glitter in it. So it's body wrapping material. All right, so what I do is I cut off, I don't know, about 6 inches, 7 inches of it. All right, cut it off the card. You can leave it on the card and it saves you a little bit more material, but it's a pain in the butt because then it's dangling with that card. So I just cut off about, 6 or 7 inches of it. What you'll notice about chenille is that it's held together by a little thread core, as I mentioned before. So what you do is you strip off some of the fuzzy material and expose the thread core. Here, I'll use my white beard as a background. How's that? Yeah, my white beard. Anyway, so you'll see that little black tip. That goes underneath the hook shank in front of the thread like you secured the wire. Okay? Now remember, I'm still back at the tail. I have not gone anywhere else with the thread. And then I just take the material, clip it in the material clip holder there. Hopefully it'll stay. Okay? And just let it hang. So here we are recapping. We have our tail, we have our flash on our tails, and we have our body material now hanging on the bottom, all right, with our wire and now our body material including the chenille. Okay? Excuse me. The other thing we want to focus on is that there's 2 ways to do a woolly bugger. There's the American way and then there's the English way. Today we're going to be tying the woolly bugger the English way, and I'll explain that when I go through the next process. Okay, so bear in mind, just keep patient. All right, so what we want to do next is we're going to bring our thread forward to the bead. All right, just bring it right up against the bead. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take our chenille, all right, our fuzzy stuff, and we're going to wrap our chenille toward the thread, making nice snug wraps up toward the thread. Notice how I'm filling in the hook and it's giving it a nice straight body. You want a nice straight body. You want a clumpy, looks like it's got a few hiccups in it, and go all the way up to the bead, just like that. Pull a little tension on it. Then what you do is, I'm holding this with my left hand. You go over and you grab it with the right hand, hold it up, take the thread and go directly behind the material once, twice, 3 times. Okay? Once you've done that, it's not going anywhere. Go ahead and cut it with your scissors. Okay? And you got this left over for another fly. Because I cut 6 inches, I still got like 5 inches left. So you didn't use that much. Then I go ahead and I make a few secure wraps. Okay? Next comes the tricky part. Since we're doing a flash-sided woolly bugger, bead-headed, flash-sided woolly bugger, we're going to take each one of those strands that we put back there and we're going to bring them forward. You can see how I'm doing that. And we're going to hold them right up against the bead, and then we're going to take the thread, secure once, twice, 3 times. Okay? Then we're going to cut the excess material off. Don't cut it too short. There's a reason for that. Cut it a little bit back from the eye, but not too short. You want to leave a little bit of the tag up there, right? Leave a little bit of the material. And the reason you do that is if you accidentally hit that thread, all that material is going to zip back and you're going to lose the flash side on the side. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Remember, we have both sides to do. Hope everyone's following me on this. You don't have to go through this process. You can actually have just added flash and left it at that at the tail, but I like doing, again, I like to do the flash on the side. So if you notice, I'm taking all the material and bringing it forward. Once, twice, 3 times. And then I cut it, again, I cut it kind of just right behind the eye. The thing you always want to focus on is never crowd the eye. And in this case, we got a bead, so we don't have to worry about that. The bead's going to keep things in check. So now we've got everything laid up. We've got our wires still back here because that leads to the next item that's going to be put on. And that's where I talked a little bit earlier between American and English. The English apply this next material now and then wrap back. The Americans apply it in the back and then wrap forward. And that material is called hackle, all right? In this case, we're using strung Chinese hackle, all right? And it's made actually for wrapping, or what we call palmering, our hackle around our body, okay? In this case, we have 2 varieties. We have some pretty decent stuff you can get through Hairline or Wapsi, and then you can get some real primo stuff from Dr. Whiting there in Delta, Colorado. He makes what's called the bugger packs, and I use the bugger packs a lot. Okay, so you have 2 varieties out there. Whatever you choose, just make sure that whatever hackle you're using, strung Chinese hackle, is that it's long, all right? You want the length. Do not use musky shalapen. It's too thick, it's too webby, it's made for a different application. This stuff is made for wrapping hackle around the body of your fly, okay? And that's called palmering. You'll hear that expression every once in a while. So anyway, Dr. Whiting's bugger packs are the best. Now a little promo there. Okay, so what you do, you don't really have to measure the size. I mean, if you had a hackle gauge, you could do that. But since this is just a woolly bugger, you can basically just eye it yourself and think, that looks pretty good. So all you do is you just take the package and pick out a nice, decent length. I like a nice big one, like that. Okay, what is that one? I don't know, about 4 inches, 5 inches. And the first thing you got to do, of course, is remove a little bit of that fuzz. You don't have to, because it's going to be placed in the front, and you might want a little bit of that fuzz in the front. Anyway, you expose that stem, and now your thread is hanging by the bead, right? Same concept. You go underneath the hook shank, just right behind the bead, in front of the thread, and secure your hackle. I do quite a few wraps of thread because you don't want to pull this hackle out, okay? Then what you want to keep close by, okay, is your hackle pliers, all right? You can put them on now. I don't, because I like to work with my fingers, my hands a little bit easier. So I lay my hackle pliers to the side when I get to the part where I'm securing it. So here we go, okay? Follow me on this. I've secured it with the thread. If you notice, one thing I haven't done yet, I don't cut that stem off, because if it does pop out, then you ain't got to get another hackle. You still have that stem so where you can secure it. Then what you want to do is you want to take and hold the hackle straight up and go around right up against the bead a couple times. Right? Then make your way back toward the tail. Okay? Now I'm running out of room for my fingers to grab it, so what I do is I reach over and I grab my hackle pliers. Now here comes the interesting part. Once you get back to where the tail is hanging, okay, you go all the way back to the tail. I'm running out of hackle there. That's why you want to make sure it's a long piece of hackle. Then you reach over, grab the wire, go underneath the hackle that you're holding with the pliers, go underneath it, let go of the hackle pliers, and now wrap your wire toward where the thread is hanging. I do it in a kind of an angle. You could do it straight up, but I like doing it at a sort of an angle. Now, there's some people saying that you should wrap it the opposite direction of the hackle, and you can do that. That's great, fine, not a problem. The thing you want to watch is that you don't crush any of your hackle as you're wrapping the wire forward. So you see how I'm wrapping that? I'm not crushing any of these hackle tips. Once you get to where you're almost at the end, watch this, folks. You hold the wire up with your right hand, and whether you're left or right, I hold it up with the right hand. Go behind the wire with the thread in the same location, right behind the bead. Once, twice, 3 times, okay? Now you can let go of the wire. It's not gonna go nowhere. Again, cut it with your fingernail clippers. Don't use your expensive scissors. And then you got wire left over for another fly, so you just lay this aside. There. Now you've got the woolly bugger pretty much completed. Bend the wire there a little bit, and I make about 2 more wraps. The first thing that you want to do is cut that stem off now. So you can actually reach over there with the scissors and cut that stem. It doesn't have to be perfect. And I leave that flash. Remember we left a little bit of that flash around the bead? I just leave it because it adds a little bit more character. Make 1 more wrap of thread and secure it. I use a whip finish tool. You can use your fingers. You can't use a half hitch tool. Okay? Okay, so here we go. This always lays on top of the thread. You got a little hook, and you got a little hook there. You first hook it with the front one. You lay it always on top, and then the other one actually changes the direction of the thread. So you bend it in that hook and then let that tool flip. Now if you notice, you got that triangle. See that triangle? Here, I'll bring my beard down there for you can see it. You can't see it then. Anyway, you see how that triangle's in there? That long part actually is what gets wrapped around the front. And then what you do is you notice this part that's on this bend, you just slide it over and unclip it, and then pull the thread and unclip it in the front. Anyway, when you get the package, if you like to use these whip finish tools, it has awesome instructions in there. Okay? And then what you do is you cut it. And you just completed the bead-headed, flash-sided woolly bugger. And then you add some head cement. And that's it, folks. Thank you again for being here. And if you got any questions, again, get a hold of me at 218-740-3040 here at the Fly Shop, Great Lakes Fly Shop. Or get a hold of me via email. That's lesterriver@aim.com, all small letters. Or get a hold of me on my webpage, and we'll talk. Anyway, good seeing you guys. Have a good day, and we'll talk to you later.